A little different. A little difference. Like one day makes yesterday. The greenhouses were like 95 degrees out. Sun was. We're gonna have to tell people to wear shorts and t-shirts, and then the sun went away, and we're all wearing jackets and coats. So that is gardening weather in New England for us, and we're all kind of used to it, and we expect it this time of the year. But it is officially spring, so we can now be excited that the snow has melted and we can actually do things. We met a few weeks ago and the entire parking lot was covered in snow, and we had snowbanks 10 feet tall, and I said, I don't know how we're going to pull this off, and then it all went away just in time. Now we're a little behind because we've been doing some projects at Kennedy's, and we were hoping to have done more projects a month ago that is now being done now. So we're a little behind, but we have new parking. We're kind of excited about that. But my name's Chris Kennedy. I am the third generation owner of Kennedy's Country Gardens. This is my family business. My great-grandfather helped my father build this place, and we used to have a nursery. We used to grow plants on the ground. Things have changed a little bit with the evolution of just the way the plant business is. But we're excited. We're making a bunch of changes. We've just installed a new parking lot where our nursery used to be. We've moved our shrubs out back. It's all still one way. Hopefully everyone is able to figure things out today. But so far so good. It seems great. So we're excited for spring. All of us have spring fever, I'm sure. And yeah, let's get right to it. So just so you know, I am also a landscape designer. I went to school for landscape contracting. I went to Penn State University, met my wife there. I might have worked at the snack bar, at the recreation center at the beach in Marshfield, but really I've had no other job because my dad calls me in college and says, "What day are you coming home?" Our nursery manager quit, and you need to, work as soon as possible. So I drove home from college at 3 a.m. I basically didn't even unload my car. The next morning I was the nursery manager, and I've never had another job. I pretty much have just grown up in this business, and I love it. It changes every day. I go to work, I don't know what the day is going to bring, and I do like that a lot. So it is a fun, rewarding business. I'm a Massachusetts certified horticulturist. I'm a member of the Boston Horticulture Society, and I also am the advisor for the South Shore Votech Horticulture Program. Okay, so. Correct. It's awesome. It's awesome. So I've been an advisor. I'm now the chairman of the advisory committee, and I've been with those guys since the start. And they are literally national champions, right? So 4 of the kids went to basically the National Association. What is it? FFA. What does FFA stand for?
Future Farmers of America.
Right. So there's a competition for landscaping, floral, all these guys. This guy's one of the national champions right there. That's Logan. So they're teaching horticulture in high school now, right down the street, and they're about to get a new school. Many of you voted for that, so big thumbs up for that. So we're excited. There is a future in horticulture. AI cannot take over our jobs, right? Right? So we're investing in the future in every way we possibly can right now, and I'm super excited for that. So what I wanted to mention to you today was the path to the perfect plant. So as a young college kid coming out of school, one of my first jobs was to help people figure out what plants to buy, and then we also have a guarantee here at a garden center. So unlike some other places that don't do that, we guarantee our plants for 3 years. So when something doesn't work out, guess who finds out about it? The nursery manager, okay? So I started to help people figure out what went wrong, because we want people to be successful, because if you guys are not successful in your gardens, you'll quit, you'll stop doing it. I'll pick up a different hobby, right? But if you plant something and it grows and you see it get big and beautiful and have tons of flowers, you do more of it, right? So we want people to be successful. That helps our business, but it also helps the whole planet, basically. And we're going to get into some of the benefits to the planet for sure today. But success is a big piece of that. And over 30 years of helping people pick out plants, I've learned a few tricks to the trade, okay? Some of these are higher level, some of these are low level, okay? And everyone's at a different level here today, so we'll just kind of talk in all areas, all levels. If you have questions, you can ask, especially if you think it pertains to a lot of people. And if it's very specialized, we can hold a few questions to the end. So yes, the goal used to be create beautiful gardens. Like when I first got out of college, let's make everyone's yard beautiful. These are my gardens, this is my backyard, this is my front yard, okay? And the goal was just to make things beautiful. And that's what I wanted to do. That's what I was kind of trained to do. There was a woman that lived right down the street in Marshfield, and she said, you know, you're answering questions about that chemical shelf over there in the wall, and you actually have a lot of influence on people coming in. And what you point to over there might have an effect on other things. And I started to think about that, and I didn't really understand the impact. So ever since then, I've been trying to think as sustainably and as earth-friendly as possible, thinking to myself, do people really need to spray and kill that bug? Do they really need to kill that weed? And gradually, we've shrunk our chemicals where we had, you know, basically fertilizers and things all over the place. I shrunk it down to that, and now I can fit my grass seed all on that one shelf. So I'm excited about that, because I think some other garden centers and the home stores and things like that, they want to expand their chemical areas and they want to sell truckloads and truckloads and truckloads. That's not my goal. I want to sell plants. That's where I make my money. Plants are way more fun. I enjoy them. My customers enjoy them. So that's really where I want to be. But I know that there's very few places to come to get your questions answered. You go to the hardware store, you might get the guy over from the nuts and bolts section to come over and help you pick out your bug spray, right? So we still have some, because I need to be able to have them, to have people come in here to buy them so I can talk to them. And sometimes I actually talk them off the ledge and say, you don't really need that. So I still keep some things here. And some things are organic and some things are not. But I need to be able to teach people. So that's a real big component of kind of what we do here at Kennedy's, and hopefully what most independent garden centers do, because you have to have a moral side to what you're doing. And that's important to me. But besides the environmental and being positive for being friendly to the environment, we actually have to be beneficial. And that is really, the last 5 or 10 years, exploded. And Doug Tellamy spoke early this week, and he spoke several times with this group, but in the Zoom. But giving back to the environment is the part that some of us didn't realize, and we're opening people's minds to it, including myself, okay? So we need to do things that are gonna benefit nature. And it's not just beautiful, but we can do both, and that's the goal, okay? So I've always said right plant, right place. That's my motto. Sometimes I change the title, but I've done this lecture a bunch of times. And really, it's about putting the right plant in the right place. A lot of people come into a garden center or anywhere you buy plants, and you're going to buy things based on, oh my goodness, what's that flower? I have to have it. You don't have a place for it. You just think it's beautiful. I'll figure it out later. How many people are guilty, okay? I have a yard. I'm a landscape designer. I have a yard full of plants that are just placed in because I couldn't find another place for it. So I don't want to tell you should never impulse buy, because, you know, that does help us as local business. But you should come with a plan and kind of think about section at a time in your garden. Come with an idea. I'll get into more of that in a second. But you want plants to fit the conditions. You want plants that are less maintenance, less water, less chemicals, less pruning, less work, less deadheading. And you want them to fit your functional needs. So when as a landscape designer, when I walk up to someone's house, the first thing I see, I say to them, and I ask this question, what are you trying to accomplish today, okay? Are you trying to make the neighbor's boat go away, all right? And you want to plant some plants over there? Are you trying to attract hummingbirds, butterflies, pollinator for insects, that type of thing? Or are you trying to have a space in your backyard to, like, have guests over or have a fire pit or something like that? So we need to know the functional thing first, but then we want to make it pretty and make it so the plants will live. There's a lot to think about when we're doing this. It's way more complex. And my friends are like, oh, you go to work, you sell plants. I'm like, I know, but it's the science, there's the design part, and now there's this whole ecological side to it that we're really in tune with it. And more customers are coming to me asking for that, which is awesome, okay? So before you're heading to the garden center, you want to pick an area. This happens to be a new house. We actually did this in Hull, and it ended up being on a television show. So it was kind of cool, but this was really bad soil. It was tough conditions. It was right near the water. I had to know what my sun was, what the soil was. I had to know how big it was. I had to take photos, and I had to bring plants back and set them up, and it all had to look perfect because it was going to be on TV. So knowing your conditions ahead of time, planning, taking a little bit of time first is important, okay? So always want to be observing. Now, most people's gardens do not happen in one day. A lot of people come to me, and some people have a lot of money, and they're like, Chris, make a garden, and I want it to look good. When can you get it done? And it's like, my garden evolves over time. All the display gardens we have here at the store, it happens over time. I observe, I see what's going on. Some things don't work. I move things grow too big, whatever. And, but I try to avoid as many of those mistakes as possible with the 30 years of experience that I have and some of the team that works here and our designers. So, but the key is knowing the conditions. What's happening there? And if you do find yourself impulsive and say, I have to have this primrose, right? Then you have to ask, well, what does the plant want? Okay? Because there's what you want. I want this as close to my eyes as I can get because I want to enjoy it. So I might put it in the sunny window. I might put it in my windowsill right now. It's still a little chilly out. This is actually very cold tolerant. But this is a wet-loving plant. I went to a garden in Hanover. Some of you have been on garden tours. There's a gentleman that has the most amazing display of conifers you've ever seen. But he has a section, a wet area in the back, and he's got a huge collection of these primroses, all different colors. And they like it damp, they like the boggy soil, and they can tolerate a fair amount of shade. A little bit of mixed sun would be ideal. So asking the plant what it wants instead of you saying, I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it where I want it. So that's really important. A lot of people do forget that, okay? So be armed with that information. Sunlight is usually the first thing we ended up talking about when someone walks in the door. We try to separate our plants in the garden center by sun and shade because that's usually the first thing we need to tackle, okay? So if you look at your sun, I tease people, I'm like, I don't expect you to go home. I'm like, what's your sunlight? I don't know. Okay, why don't you go home and sit in your yard all day on a sunny day and watch your sunlight conditions. How many hours does it look like this and how many hours does it look like this, okay? And no one's going to stand there for every waking hour when the sun is up, right? But if you go at 9 and 12 and 3 or pick 3 times close to that, and if all 3 look like this, then we can plant full sun plants. If all 3 look like this, then we can't plant full sun plants, okay? So this primrose won't be happy here, but it would be happy right where this dappled shade is. It would be perfect. Same thing with these hellebores. It would love it right in here, okay? But so if all 3 of those conditions, if you could know them, 2 out of 3 is usually more sun than shade, and 2 out of 3 is more sun than shade. So it's more likely a sun plant. Almost every single plant has a sun on it or some kind of indication that it's sun, part sun, or shade. If it has all 3, then it's very versatile. If it says sun, part sun, it can take a little bit of shade. If it says part shade, shade, you can pretty much plan on, you better get it in as much shade as you possibly can, or at least some dappled shade. Does that make sense?
This winter season, I lost a lot of my shade. So now
Because some trees came down.
big 40-year-old,
Yes.
So now I have to figure out
Right.
how do I take those plants that are still in the ground and
Yeah. We had a similar situation. We're going to plant 4 native trees out here. I took down a non-native honey locust that was planted a bunch of years ago. The new trees are not going to give me the shade that I need. Some of those plants are going to suffer. They're not going to suffer now. We have this conversation in the garden center. My perennial person's like, I got to get the shade cover up. It's like, it's April. Don't worry about it. The sun in April is not nearly as bad. July and August, some of those plants are going to start to suffer. Now, you can plan ahead and move the ones that are going to be the most stressed. plants are incredibly resilient. So some of them are more tolerant than sometimes you try to get the perfect conditions and people plant plants in the wrong place all the time. You might find that they're better than you think they are because when you dig them up and move them, you're going to also add some stress. But if you were to do that, do it now while it's dormant, while they're not growing, while it's still wet and cool, and put them in places where they're going to be happier, especially the things that are not as versatile. So the ones that say sun, shade, they're going to be fine. It's the ones that say part shade, shade, or the ones that just say shade, like a fern is just going to get cooked. Yeah. But your hosta might make it, you know what I mean? So you have to kind of know what the plant is and individually make those decisions. It's not easy. That's not a good situation to be in, but it happens. And it's all part of nature. It happens in the forest. It happens everywhere. So these are just a few plants. I just randomly threw it out there. But, these plants are just like sun-loving, more sun the better, hot, dry, all that is good. And they're usually the prettiest plants. The ones with the best flowers are usually the ones that go in full sun. I find that shade plants tend to be not as floriferous, although there are some exceptions to that. They tend to be more foliage type plants. But you see that on the tags when you're in the nurseries. You can talk to the people that work at the garden centers, but you try to stay with full sun plants that are getting 6 hours of no shadows. So many people tell me the front of their house is full sun. I say, take a picture, show it to me in the morning, and show it to me in the afternoon. Oh, guess what? You have shadows all afternoon. No, it's full sun. Yeah, but 6 feet out. Well, you're going to be planting in the shadows, right? Yes. Okay. You don't have full sun. So, you really have to observe. It's a science. How many hours? No shadows. Okay? Super important. Okay? And then there is a big difference between morning shade and afternoon sun and morning sun, afternoon shade. Okay? So hydrangea right here, not the most sustainable plant. A great plant in the right place, but doesn't like the afternoon sun, loves the afternoon shade. So the first picture I showed you of my garden in the backyard where it's pretty shady, those plants do well. I don't have to water them a lot, but a hydrangea in the sun is, it just wants moisture, it wants water, and we have to water a lot more, and it's not sustainable. We don't have enough water on this planet, or at least especially in Situate. So that should never be planted in the sun. It's beautiful, and it could be planted in the right place. You probably don't want to fill your yard full of that because, again, we don't have enough water. But if you give it the afternoon shade and a little bit of morning sun, the morning sun gives it enough sun for it to flower, but it doesn't wilt in the afternoon. Anybody plant a hydrangea in too much sun? Right? The white ones, okay, and there are native ones and nativars of the basically, I call them Annabelle hydrangeas, but they're arborescens types, and there's several native varieties or nativars, and they do very well in full sun. And I don't have to water them nearly as often. On a 95-degree day and it hasn't rained for a couple weeks, I will get out there and water those, okay? Ideally, when the sun is down to maximize the amount of moisture so you're not wasting water with evaporation. But picking the right plants for that. So like your peonies, they can take some afternoon sun, but they can take full day sun, but they can take some shade in the morning. But if it's shaded all afternoon, your peonies may not flower as well next year. Does that all make sense? Okay. Shade. So more foliage plants in the shade. I tend to find that. The hellebores, oh my gosh, they love it. The deer don't eat them. This is an amazing plant. I'll talk about them in a minute. This is Pulmonaria, one of my favorites. Hostas, boxwoods, astilbes. This is a columbine, that's a native. So you have lots of choices in the shade, but it does narrow down a little bit more, and you have to be a little bit more precise about what you plant, okay? Super important to know that, but that's usually going to be less than 3 hours of sun or dappled sun most of the day where a little bit of sunlight gets in there. Okay, cold hardiness. This is a big one. So this is a picture of the patio. I don't know what that was, a month ago, 2 months ago. The planters out there are this tall, and the snowbank was this. I had to walk back down those stairs in the back to go check on my generator back here at 1 o'clock in the morning to make sure that it wasn't covered. But this snow, in theory, actually helped our plants this year, okay? because when it was 12 degrees and 10 degrees at night, this was insulating our plants. And a lot of people go, oh, the snow is so bad, and and it breaks a lot of branches, and we have a lot of trees down and branches. But when it was that cold, it's really the lowest temperature that does a lot of the damage to our plants. So if we're kind of exploring what will work in 6A, 6B, 7A, which is what we are here, because we're close to the coast, right? So best way for me to explain this is the closer we are to the ocean temperatures, even though they're like, what, high 30s right now? So when they do the marathon in a couple weeks in Hopkinton, their forsythias will be in bloom. You'll see the joggers running down. It looks like spring there. And here, we're like, my forsythias aren't in bloom. My daffodils aren't up. What's going on? Well, the ocean temperature is actually keeping us cold in the spring. But if you ever go to Nantucket in October, it's beautiful because the ocean temperature is still warm, so it keeps things warmer. And through the winter, that ocean temperature is keeping our temperatures high enough that we can grow more plants. And there's a big difference between, like, the ocean is right there for us, and 10 minutes that way, what we can grow. So I have a southern magnolia in my yard. I have a camellia. I have some things that aren't supposed. I have a crepe myrtle in my yard in Cohasset that grow here that aren't supposed to grow here. And if you don't believe in global warming, I'm guessing I'm talking to the choir here, but we can grow plants that we couldn't grow before for sure. And if we had the winter we had 4 or 5 years ago, where I did a rose post about roses having to be cut back. We had more traction on that post and questions because it was so cold. It was like -8 or one night, and a lot of rose bushes. No one's blue hydrangeas flowered that year. It was a tough year. We had no snow when it got down to that temperature. This year, our low temperatures were in the teens, and we had a lot of snow. So I think we're going to have a decent year for gardening besides the breakage on the snow. So for the most part, we're good.
Question about hydrangeas.
Yes.
So my hydrangeas were underneath the biggest parts of the snow because they were the closest to the driveway.
Mhm.
So there's so much breakage. Is there anything I can do to help them along?
You don't need to.
Okay.
Hydrangeas are incredibly resilient. If you have a couple broken branches, you can cut them off. But I tell people blue hydrangeas, it's the macrophylla large leaf hydrangeas, the ones that like the shade rather than like the sun. Tell people to leave them alone. If you see some dead branches in there and you want to trim them out, that's fine. Let them completely leaf out. Let them start to flower. If you start cutting, then you probably cut flowers off because they flower along the stems. So if they die back, then you probably won't have flowers because the flower could come out at any point along that stem. It could come out on the tip. It could come out here. It could come out here. So if you keep cutting it back, so I have a guy that was cleaning out back. He's like, oh, boss, I did a good job. I'm like, you cut back on my blue hydrangeas. I told you not to prune. It happens all the time. Husband, wife, landscaper, even here. He cut back my white ones. The white ones are fine, but the blue ones don't want to be trimmed. Okay, so we just leave them alone. If the snow was getting in there, and I was throwing snow into my plants, the deciduous ones are not catching the snow. It was getting all in there because it was light, fluffy snow. The last storm was heavy, wet. That's the one that did the damage, right? So we have arborvitae branches down. You see all kinds of things. There are ways to fix that, and if people have questions on that, I'd be glad to show you how to screw plants back together. There are things you can do. The other thing I wanted to cover on this is winter, wind, and sun. This is a big one, okay? So if you have a plant, this is a rhododendron, okay? It's a dwarf rhododendron. If you have a broadleaf plant, a plant with leaves in the winter, the more sun and the more wind and the more cold we get, the more likely what's happening is, let's just say the ground is frozen, okay? All right? When you go to water or the rain comes, it doesn't penetrate the soil because it's frozen, okay? So we had hellebores out last week. It was a cold night. The soil was frozen. To water the plant, they all look droopy. To water them, we had to bring them in, put them in a cart. We had to let the soil thaw, and then we could water them, and they perked right back up again. So in the winter, what happens is the wind and the sun is hitting the foliage all winter long. Boxwoods, rhododendrons, andromedas, mountain laurels, like anything you can think of that has a leaf in the winter is suffering in sun and wind and cold because the moisture is just, so my best analogy is if you had a match and you had a white piece of paper and if you held it here, you could maybe feel a little bit of warmth there, but it's not going to do anything. You get close to the edge, it starts to turn brown right around the edge when I'm holding it there. When I get close, it will burn it, right? Well, that's what happens to your leaves. So some of these hellebore leaves are a little bit burnt and crispy. Well, we're going to get new leaves, new flowers. You prune off some of that. With your broadleaf evergreens, you can't afford to lose every leaf on your plant. They don't just replace themselves. Hydrangeas lose all their leaves, rose bushes, all your viburnums, all those things. They lose all their leaves and they get all new leaves back. They don't care about winter wind and sun. But your broadleaf evergreens, so if you stick them out there without a coat on, basically is what I say, if you took your plant, put it on the beach with no clothes, it's going to be cold. And it's going to rob all the moisture from it and it's going to have dry skin. So you need to wrap it with burlap, do things like that, or don't plant them in the wrong place. Those plants usually want to be sheltered under trees where you don't get the wind. Less work for you, the plants are happier, you're happier, right? They look better. People come in all the time, my boxwoods, they look bronze, they look, yeah, because they were in a lot of sun. Now, you wanted them there, so you planted them there. But that's not where they want to be, so bring them closer to the house, protect them, shelter them. Super important to get that stuff right. Salt is another thing. Doesn't damage plants without leaves nearly as much. The ones that have leaves in the winter are going to be damaged more. Okay, so I mentioned the broadleaf evergreens versus the perennials, the grasses, the trees, things like that. They tend to do much better. Spireas, they're really easy. There's some nice native varieties out there. So wanted to explain the difference. So when I went to college, we talked a lot about soil tests, pH, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Those are the numbers that are on the fertilizer bag. We used to get into the science of soil, and it was more to do with chemicals. Now, I basically, someone comes in and I said, dig up some soil, put it in a bucket, let me take a look at it. And I look at the color, and if it's tan like sand, or if it's tan like clay, or gray, it's even worse, it basically means there's no nutrients in here. There's no compost. Like if you live in an old neighborhood or a farm where the leaves have been falling off the trees forever, and you dig, it's dark, rich, black soil, okay? That's what your plants really want to grow in. They don't want to grow in this or that, okay? Because of the color. So I kind of look at someone's soil test and I'm like, yeah, and then I put it down and I'm like, all right, so you need some compost because you basically need to get the life back into your soil. You need 30 years of leaves falling and then turning that into your soil. So if you don't have that, if you don't have your own compost pile, you can get it delivered in a truck, you can buy it by the bag, you can bring the compost back in. In this situation, the clay, when you pack it, that's what we make pottery out of, right? It's so packed that when the roots try to go in to grow, they can't because they can't breathe. And it's so weird. People are like, why does the roots have to breathe? Well, they're alive. They have to breathe. They need air, okay? And in this situation, if you put a plant in the beach, the roots go out, they can breathe because it's like little stones. There's a lot of air in between each of the particles. So the bigger the piece, the more air there is in between because they bump into each other and there's just air spaces. The smaller the particle, the better it packs together, okay? So the plants tend to do better with well-drained soil, but you can see how tan that is. And my analogy I always use is you go to the beach and you build the sandcastle and you put the moat around it and you go down with the bucket and you put the water in the moat and then you go back to get more and it's gone because the sand just goes, it just goes right through. Great for plants. Golf courses, they have lots and lots of sand because they want that drainage to go through, right? The turf does better that way. And it's much tougher with clay. So adding compost helps add basically a sponge to retain the moisture. It has all the living material in it. And if you add it to clay, it breaks up those tiny little particles and you mix it in. The more you mix it in, the more you mix it like a cake, the better it is going to be for the plants because then they can breathe and it will help retain those nutrients and all the living materials. So this is Plant Magic. The folks from Plant Magic are here today. It's a Marshville company. It's now a national company where one of their first customers, Kerry, was a customer here before I was a customer of his. But this is a national company, and they basically have Microbes, mycorrhizae, all these micronutrients that are in this little bag, thousands of millions of little living organisms. And sometimes I say, take a tablespoon on a new planting, especially if your soil is in this condition. If you can't truck in all that compost, on new planting sites particularly, where they build a new house and they scrape all the good soil away and you're left with this, adding that compost is good. Sometimes you can't do this, and this is a little bit, it's almost like cheating a little bit, but it is replenishing some of what is in that compost. It's really good for your containers and plants and houseplants because that soil tends to be void. If you look at it, it's brown, it's really porous, but it's not dark black. And this adds a little bit of that living material back to your planters and some of your plants you're planting. Yes?
If you use that, if I can use it in my raised bed,
Yes.
which I'm growing
Yep.
vegetables in,
Yep.
can I eat the vegetables?
Absolutely. It's 100% organic. Okay? You can talk to the guys about it out there, but it's basically an organic fertilizer. It's basically using nature and putting it back into your soil. So it's not like, so we used to, again, when I grew up, we learned about nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. That was like, you have to have this, you have to have this, you have to have this. You just need to have life in your soil. You need to have good aeration. Sometimes we overthink things, and if we're not sure if we have it, you can take a tablespoon, throw it in a bucket of water, you pour it into your plant, it gets into the roots. This stuff does not like to be out in sun, so they make a granular version. I'm not a big fan of that because you take it and you put it out and you sprinkle it on top and then the sun beats on it. UV rays kill a lot of those microorganisms. They need to be in the ground with your roots, and they help let the good things in and keep the bad guys out, right? If that makes any sense. So the carrier is water. So you put that water-soluble material in there, and then you pour it in, and I recommend it with all your new plantings. I think it's very effective. I sell a whole lot less fertilizer nowadays because we just sell these little packages, and then once your plants are in good soil, they don't need a lot of chemicals. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Planning issue. So if I have, right now my garden is covered with the leaves, I gave them a little buffer in the fall.
Yeah.
But now, when do I pull them back and then add my own homemade compost and or this?
So everyone's saying now to leave your leaves as long as you possibly can, and not to cut back your perennials because sometimes there's critters that are living inside the stems, and the birds are also eating some of the seeds that if they haven't already ate them all already. So as long as you're willing to wait.
Okay.
That's a debate, you know what I mean? The longer you can wait.
Like a cake, like
A lot of people are saying wait till May, June. It's hard for me to tell every customer to wait till June, but if you can wait a little while, that's good. Those leaves are also insulating your plants, and if you turn them into the soil, they will break down and add compost, or bring them to the compost pile and bring it back and form a compost when you're ready. Yep.
Does it make sense to mix sand in with the soil?
If your sand is clay, it won't hurt, but compost is really almost all you need to do. Like, I look at these soil reports and I just say, add compost. You know?
Is there a percentage, like how much compost goes with how much soil?
When I did my vegetable garden, I brought my dump truck home, I pulled it to the end of the driveway, I just dumped the whole compost, and I planted right in it. Now, the compost is a little strong, it's high in nutrients. I almost probably needed some soil mixed into it, but over time, it just kind of works itself out. So I don't really think you can overdo it with compost personally. I'm not really in the compost business. Like, there's people that ship it and truck it and things like that. We don't really do much of that, but so I'm not saying that for sales reasons. It's just it really is what makes life tick is all the living material that's in the soil. So adding that is never a bad thing. I mean, what's holding you back is physically getting it all there, the price to do it all. You know what I mean? So, price and how much work is that's the limiting factor. But if it's a new garden and you haven't, like if it's been scraped of all the good stuff, which is almost every new development, you really, most people don't invest enough in their soil. And then you're struggling, your plants are struggling for the first 4 or 5 years. Every development I go to, why didn't they pay to bring the compost in? Because the builder doesn't want to pay. The new homeowner's like, didn't you do the landscaping? I paid for the landscaping. And then there's this argument for the first 5 years, and the plants don't do well. And then what happens is it's been mulched a few times, and the organic material gets in there. So the mulching actually in this situation is really, really helpful because it's adding that organic material to that soil, you know? Yeah.
Do you put the plant magic down before you put the plant in? Like when you dig the hole?
I use the liquid version, so it's like I put it in with water, and I soak the soil after I plant it. Yep, I think it's just easier because if you think about it, you dig the hole, you take all the soil and put it there, and then you're trying to get the plant magic and all the microbes to touch the roots. If you mix it around, you know, if you dig out 6 inches around or 12 inches around, it's going to take a while for those roots to reach it. If you water the actual plant that you planted with it, it'll, in some of the soil just around it, it will work faster and better, more effective, in my opinion. Another thing I wanted to mention is growth rate, okay? This is like huge, people don't get it. What is going to be the mature size of my arborvitae? Okay, so that would be assuming, okay, so we grow, right? We grow from a little kid to a certain age, and then we stop growing, and then hopefully we're not shrinking and going this way, right? All right? I'm experiencing some of those things. But I think people come into a garden center and they're like, how big is my arborvitae going to get? Or how big is my viburnum going to get? And I say, it's going to grow 6 inches per year. Well, how big is that going to get? How long are you going to be around to see it? Because I've seen a viburnum that people say, oh, it gets 6 feet tall and 6 feet wide. Okay. I've seen one 15, 20 feet tall and wide. You see boxwoods that, oh, you can plant them under your windows. I've seen boxwoods in England that are, 30 feet tall and wide. I mean, if you wait long enough, you're going to see plants that are going to be really big. And so if the snow doesn't damage them, if an insect doesn't damage them, if you don't remove it because you decided to do a renovation project or whatever happens to plants, all that snow damage, if they continue to live and be happy, they'll grow and grow and grow and grow. So this green giant arborvitae, this is at the Cohasset Library, that grows 2 feet a year, approximately, okay? All right? So multiply it, 20 years from the size it is now. So if you buy a 20-foot one and you wait 20 years, 2 feet, it's going to be 60 feet, right? So you have to think about the growth rate. One of the nurseries we do business with has a tag on it that says 3 to 6 inches a year, 6 to 12 inches a year. I love that because you can do the math. So 5 years from now. So everyone says, I'm going to live in my house forever, but the average person lives in their house 7 years. So I kind of do my designs thinking, okay, these plants will look good for the next 7 years. If you get 30 and 40 and 50 years and your plants are outgrown or too big, that plant doesn't owe you anything. That plant has done its job for that amount of time, especially if you use in your foundation plantings. But so that's why you want to kind of plan for that growth. Can I let this plant grow for a long period of time without having to replace it? And that's the goal, is to try to get the growth rate right. In New England, if it says 3 to 6, if you look at North America, we're closer to the top, right? So we're going to be closer to 3 than 6. All right, so when you look at the growth rate, that's more important. If the plant doesn't say it, we can help you figure out the growth rate. This is green giant. That's probably 12, 15 years old. This is the junior giant, which is going to be grow half as fast. This is a better choice for smaller spaces. I think we're going to see green giants, popping up like we see white pines. Those are the ones that all came down in the storms. We see them around. We're going to start seeing green giants. This is a Pacific Northwest native, and this is like a little dwarf plant. But dwarf is funny because does that mean it will never get above? Nope. It grows this much, 5 minutes. It grows this much every year. So it's slow, but it will still grow. That makes sense. So if it outgrows the space, dig it up, give it more room. Okay. This is a perennial called Amsonia. It's one of my favorite plants of all time. Okay. This is a Plain States native, okay? It's also called Blue Star. That plant never gets taller than this, all right? It never gets taller than this, right? It's a perennial. It's not a shrub, so it doesn't have a shrub. It dies back, it comes back. But guess what? It gets a little bit bigger every year. See all this space right here where I have to weed and mulch, right? Now it's out to here. Guess what? I don't have to weed and mulch anymore. It's awesome, right? I have to edge the bed so they don't mix, right? But now it's out to the edge. I used to have a boxwood. I replaced it with a native species. It flowers. It has spectacular fall color, and I hardly have to water it or do anything to it. It's an amazing plant. So I highly recommend the Amsonias. And so perennials are a little bit different than shrubs and trees. Shrubs and trees grow forever. You just have to know that. Yes? Amsonia, also called blue ice. Yep, there's a whole bunch of varieties. I have another slide. I'm going to run out of time. Plant shapes are really important. This is a round boxwood, very low. This is a pointy boxwood. This is a native R. So this is, I'm rusty. It's been a long winter. But this is right out here in the patio, and it grows, this is slender silhouette sweet gum, and it grows super tall and skinny. We're going to plant some native ones on the property that are going to be the more straight species that are more round than that, but this is a good choice for a small space, and if you have a very narrow property, you can plant a row of these and it will block the neighbor. So there is some advantage to knowing that the habit and the shape of the plants that you're growing.
Here, the neighbor who's all their shade, all their sun gardens now have all that shade.
Right. Yeah.
That's an issue.
That's all things you got to plan on. And then you can sometimes prune plants to do things you want. This is espalier. So this has beautiful trunk. This is also right on the other side of this wall. And this is a plant with beautiful bark that I pruned off all the branches so we could see the bark. So you can manipulate shape a little bit, but really if you want plants to do what you want them to do, you should know what shape they're going to be before you plant them. And then it's less work for you to have to do all the pruning, if that makes any sense. All right, we're wrapping up. I'm not going to get to all of this, but when I mentioned the beneficial part, not just sustainable plants, not just things that are easy for us and easy on the planet, but also giving back to the planet, we want to not just plant things that attract bees to our yard to pollinate this plant. We actually want to attract plants that the caterpillars will eat, okay? Because the birds need to eat the caterpillars, if that makes any sense. In this case, we want the caterpillar to turn into a butterfly, but in many instances, we need to supply enough caterpillars for the bird population. So when we think pollinator, a lot of people are thinking, oh, I'm going to bring in butterflies to my yard. I'm going to bring in the different types of bees. But if we don't let the caterpillars grow, we won't get those, okay? So there's holes in the leaves, yes, let them be. Most times, they're doing beneficial things. There are some bad insects out there that need to be controlled and so forth, but we need to be planting that way. We need to be thinking that way. I won't get into all this thing, but there are plants that are not really sustainable. There are plants that are now invasive. There are plants that are natives, native Rs, and hybrids of natives. So it gets a little confusing. I could definitely afterwards get into this conversation a little bit more. But this is the straight species. In some instances, this is better, but it gets a disease called anthracnose. This one doesn't get the disease anthracnose, but it's a native R. Some people say you have to plant the straight species, and other people will be like, I'm okay with the native R because it doesn't get the anthracnose. So, and this one doesn't get it either, but it's bred with a Japanese non-native. So the horticultural world is getting more complex every single day, and we're trying to keep track of it. This is one of my favorite plants of all time. It's out here. This is me sitting on a rock, Oxydendron sourwood, okay? That tree is right outside. This is it in all its glory. Beautiful summer flowers, a North American native, amazing fall color, and the pollinators love this right now in the summer because the bees are all over it. All right, so we're wrapping up. Happy to answer questions. I need to make room for the next presenter, so I'm happy to move to the front of the store, the greenhouse, wherever you want me to be if you have questions. But I just wanted to mention that you can sign up to be a member of the Watershed Association. You get a Kennedy's gift card. We also have a coupon in the brochure for 20% off one item today. So anything that catches your attention, supporting a local business. We are trying our hardest to be an educational resource for you. And in turn, when you go to the grocery store and you might buy a plant there, or you have a decision to buy it here, please help the local businesses. This is how we do it. This is how it works, right? So if you can try to stay away from the chain stores and support your local businesses, this is how we do business. I know there's a lot of fundraisers that sell pumpkins and mums and all these. That's how we make a living. That's how my entire staff makes a living. And we go to training. We get educated on these things. We come back, we learn, we change our mindsets on some things. And we really have tried to embrace a lot of this new way of thinking. So I appreciate all of your time. I appreciate your support. And I hope you all have a great day and happy spring.